Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 2 in 7 weeks and 7 facets of flow, your gateway to miracles. Episode 2 is being unclear. Episode 1 last week was the unknown. So we can all be forgiven for thinking they're pretty similar, and they are of course related. And I'll talk through why I wanted to separate them out. Certainly both topics could both have 2 hours each, but separating them out is just a way of reflecting upon different elements of them, but hopefully I'll make that not too clear, because I want to swim in the sea of possibility, which is part of the juice of being unclear, the lack of clarity, which expands possibility. So it occurred to me as I was just brushing my hair to get on screen, and because I realised I don't often do that, but I did today, that I came upon the 7 facets of flow in a moment of distinct unclearness, distinct moment of lack of clarity. So I'll just start off with a brief story, because I find it always a good place to launch when you're in that unplanned space, when you decide to flow consciously, because we are all always connected to flow, the perpetual, benevolent energy, intelligent energy behind all life. But it's when we are aware of that, when we consciously connect, that it seems the window of wisdom seems to appear. And that's how it appears to me anyway. So let's launch with a small story of something that I expect most people will relate to. I was in a conference in October, and it was called Financial Freedom University. And I've been really intrigued about exploring money, what it means to people, what it means to me, why it's such a hot topic, why it's such a tricky subject, and why it seems to be one of the areas anyway, or for me I think probably the area over my lifetime that appears to be the exception to some of these fundamental truths and realities. Let's not use that word reality, actually, fundamental principles of life. So I was there at Financial Freedom University, and really open to hearing something different, hearing something new, getting excited about not knowing, and certainly not being clear about why I decided to spend this weekend there, the first weekend since having 2 small children that I spent away. By the time we got to day 2, we had really settled into the environment of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which used to be a very common environment for me, but I've moved away from it a bit as a technique. As with all techniques, they have their uses, their places, they work sometimes for some of the people. But I suppose it was one of those tools that I've kind of moved through, and trying to get down further into more foundational elements of what creates our reality, what we human/spiritual beings are really made of, and how we really do function in the world, in our physical world. So it was really repeating some of the old ground. And whilst I thought, well, look, I could hear something fresh, I might learn something new, I was getting really strong feelings, messages to just switch off from it and use that time, because it was precious time. I don't get a huge amount of time concentrated in long periods of time where it's just me and my intuition and space. So I thought, what shall I do with this? And really it was only an hour, because it was towards the end of the day, because I really did want to honour my time there, respect the other people there, and the lady who was running it, which I do hugely. So it was towards the end, I thought, well, I could either go early, or I could just spend this time to sit in this room and do something else. And I found myself writing down what I now call a big idea. And this is what I invite my clients to get into the energy of, an expansive energy of a big idea. Having moved away from a goal, which I found being much more contracted, with less possibility inherent in it. And I did talk about this in episode 1, The Unknown, so I won't repeat it, but it's written in an article I wrote on being unclear, which I will add to your email with the recording. So I was getting into the energy and really excited of the big idea of flow, how it could proliferate out as a business. And I hesitated there because it doesn't feel like a business. I'm exploring business in another program called Flow Business or Flow Biz. I haven't decided what to call it yet, because my life is our life. It's one. You know, what we're talking about here with flow is the one energy, the connected space of all things. So how I can separate out business, you know, it wouldn't make sense. It would certainly be off message at the very least. But I was mapping out how my message could be delivered in a way that would be congruent to me and congruent to this connected space I'm feeling I'm in more and more. And it was fun, and I've still got it in my mind, and I have actually written it down somewhere, but I've let it go for now. But this is when I came up with these 7 facets of flow, which I didn't call 7 facets of flow then. I just kind of wrote down what flow meant to me and what kind of language was around it to help me communicate it to people. So again, as I've probably said before too, language is our method of communication, main method of communication, and it's our great unifier, but it's also could be our great divider because it's all up for interpretation. But it's what we have mainly. So I just jotted down these things from the unknown, being unclear, acceptance, trust, surrender, connection, and love. Not in that order at that point, and I didn't know that I'd got 7. I was in a space of complete openness, and it wasn't clear at all on what those 7 things would mean, even that they were 7 things. But step by step over the 4 weeks, I guess it was, because I ended up doing 7 days and 7 facets of flow on Facebook Live, and just spoke whenever I could on each topic each day. And that was a prequel to my webinar, What is Flow? So simply the reason I'm telling you that is that it was a step-by-step clarity in the moment. But it came from a bigger space of really being unclear. Why was I at that event? Why had I decided to stay? What could I do in that time? And just moment to moment, trusting the feeling, checking in, well, I'll stay. Oh, well, I'll write this. Oh, well, it seems to now be this. And then coming away, oh, it's 7 facets. Oh, I think I'm going to hop onto Facebook Live and speak every day. There was no, I think some people call it reverse engineering when they're sort of looking at their business plans. You know, where do I want to be? And reverse engineer it from there. So go backwards and see where you need to start off. Nothing like that at all. Yet I managed to get a nice sign up, some interested people, and from it has come this course. But I hadn't planned that. And I'm detached, and that's another word in the energy of being unclear. If we are attached to clarity, we're missing out on the, 100 billion, any mathematicians out there who can give me a big number, of permutations and combinations of what could happen in the next moment. Because we're prescribing life beyond that which flows through us for us anyway. And how it seems to me now is that understanding this, and I feel like I'm going to quote myself now, I guess sometimes you don't need it written down, but understanding this huge and humble, loving force that is flow, moving through us and for us, does give you just the right amount of certainty to move forward. What is the right amount of certainty? Well, I guess it's the amount that allows you to take the next step. Sometimes that certainty might need to be huge because you might feel like you're making a big step. Again, that's all perceptual anyway. And sometimes it's just a little inkling of knowing to just take you to the next. And this is really where I'm exploring this in Flow Business, Flow Biz. because it's counterintuitive to what we're taught. The 7 steps to this. Sorry, I'm obviously fixated on 7, but there's a good reason for that. And I'll mention it again at the end. I'll probably mention it in every week because it is key, this mathematical universe. But normally it's the 10 steps or the 5 steps or whatever else. But it's not about the amount of steps or how you take them or when you take them. It's about them dropping into your body as the right step to take at the right moment. So, conducting a business, because I have to use that word to connect to what other people get a sense of around what you do to generate income, to be able to put a roof over your head, what your purpose in life is, what your mission is. So I'm using that word business until further notice and I find another one. But I mentioned that word purpose, so it's an interesting one to move on to. Have you found your purpose in this one life? I used to ask myself that question frequently. And I never really knew if I had or not. And I've discovered now there's probably a very good reason for that. Because we're led to believe that if you haven't found your purpose, you are doubting yourself. You're not fulfilling your potential. That's another phrase, isn't it? Fulfilling your potential. And you're not living your highest life. And you're not serving yourself and you're not serving the world. There's this great big energy built up around purpose. And what is your purpose? And finding it. And whilst it can be a fun journey, I found in my more conventional life coaching past that the fun in it was fairly short-lived if you didn't think you'd found it, or if you were desperately searching for something that you thought other people had that you didn't. This whole them and us separation element began. I speak to that a lot in week 6 when we talk about connection versus separation. So the way I see it now, and the way I want to sort of offer it out, is that we don't have one purpose. How can we really have one purpose? Are we going to stop moving and shifting and going through the cycles of life? Are we going to stop that birth and death of the seasons that our bodies and our physicalities go through? I think that's really what we are living in innocent ignorance, I would say, because we've separated ourselves so much from the natural world, from the mirror that's outside our window, the moon and the stars and the movement of the universe. This great big powerful pulsating energy of which we're part. So how can we find our purpose and then land in it and that's it and stop and there we are? So really, isn't it just a simple shift to feeling purposeful? It might not sound very different, but for me, it's hugely different. Being and feeling purposeful, arguably, is what the human condition is about. Man's search for meaning. By dint of being human and having the power of thought, we're curious, we're intelligent beings, we are inherently creative because we create our life from moment to moment. I used to think that word creativity could never apply to me because I couldn't draw. That was how one-dimensional the thought process for me was, in which I grew up. You know, I grew up thinking that things had to be a certain way. I was shown certain things and led to believe, my responsibility, my thinking, that told me to believe that things should be a certain way. You know, I wish now that I'd had lots of people telling me different things to muddy the waters, to get me unclear as to how things are, so that I could then do my own investigations, which is what, you know, later on in life I started to do and am still doing. But we're inherently creative. We can create throughout our entire lives. We only stop creating when we die in this physical life. And even then, I don't know what we're creating afterwards, but we're still energy. Energy never dies, it just changes form, as we know now. That's an interesting thought. So being purposeful in this life, because we're given the power of thought, which makes us so intelligent. My friend's dad, when I was in my 20s, used to say to us, he was a Geordie guy, I won't try and mimic his accent, but it was his accent that made it even more powerful. You girls, you think yourselves up your own arses, he used to say. This over-analysis of trying to fulfill the purpose that we thought we were here to do, this over-analysis of being who we thought we were supposed to be, rather than just who we were in that moment. Because we thought there was a clarity around that. We thought we knew. Instead of swimming in this massive ocean, instead of allowing that big space, which most of us push away because it feels scary. You know, imagine swimming in that big open ocean with its currents and its tides and its movement that we can't control. But we have that inherent ability to be buoyant. And so, which is why I like that metaphor. You know, let it take us to show us things. And be humble and curious about what it's showing us. And moving from purposeful moment to purposeful moment. And I've used the analogy before that I can feel purposeful chopping up some broccoli and putting it in the steamer to make as part of the dinner for my children and my family. Just as purposeful as maybe sitting here and talking to you, or writing another article, or getting into the exciting energy of one of my ideas, my big ideas, instead of my contracted goals, my expanded ideas. So being purposeful is very different. And it allows us to keep moving, keep shifting, and keep letting in that feeling of not being clear about what's next. So I've never felt more purposeful in my life than I do in these moments recently with my children and with my flow message. So I feel very grateful. But I'm open to that changing. I'm open to that shifting. I'm open to that being different. Right now, it doesn't feel like it will be. But isn't that the human experience? We only know how we feel right now. So this is another signpost to living now. Not trying to force the change, but allowing the change in. It's about the direction of the movement, not the movement itself. So allowing in and moving with it, or trying to force it forward. I know which feeling I prefer, and I know which shows up the miracles for me. So just as there's not one purpose in life for each of us, in my humble opinion, how can there be one soulmate, let's use that word, one person for us, one great romantic love? How can it be that that's always going to be true? Because as a human piece of energy that is part of the universal energy, we're always going to be cycling, moving, shifting, changing, flowing. And our relationships do as well. How can they not? So just like moving life on a linear, forcing life on a linear route, taking that linear direction from A to B, from not knowing your purpose to knowing your purpose, or from looking for love to finding love, and then stopping there. It's completely against nature, which is like this. And arguably those circles can move. My study of the science of the universe is very, very basic right now, but boy, am I learning a lot. And every time I learn something new about the planets or the moon cycles, or reflect on where I am in my body and my mind according to that, there seems to be some connection. So in a relationship, when we're taking our marriage vows, and just like a lot of other little girls in the Western world, I presumed I'd always get married. I always presumed I'd get married and sign that piece of paper. And that piece of paper was very important, and that marriage contract would mean that, it was a very serious commitment, and I wouldn't be getting divorced, etc., etc. And I see that differently too, because you can have that clarity in the moment because of where flow has moved you, and you've listened and you felt that feeling, and it's right. I won't even go into the realm of people who commit to another person knowing it's wrong. That's a whole other ball game. But we know that we're even denying the now right now when we do that, and that's when disease starts to show up in our bodies, because we're in a contracted space of fear, doing something that we think we should, rather than because it's what we feel is right. But we take those vows because in that moment there, we want to be with that person. And yet we promise our entire life to that person. Wow. That's sure one hell of a piece of clarity that I can't imagine I would ever have. And there's a reason for that, because we're not meant to. We're not meant to force life into that clearer space. Now, one thing that I have discovered in my own relationship with Damien, and his name is right in front of my face right now, which irony doesn't escape me. We're in a relationship, but we're not married, and we have 2 children. Is that relationships die and are reborn all the time. Sometimes together and sometimes apart. I actually wrote that on a friend of mine's Facebook comment recently. Very, very surprisingly, one of my friends said she was going to mediation. They're a couple that I didn't expect that of. When do you expect it? But because it's really struck me in my relationship with Damien that we go through tussles all the time. And there's been a quickening. The quickening that happened towards the end of the 9-year universal cycle, which ended in 2016, and the beginning of the 2017 9-year cycle, universal cycle. We've experienced a quickening, more arguments, more learning, more growth, more times when I thought, I don't think I want to be with you. Is this right? Is that the growth that I'm supposed to experience? So endless questioning. And at every point where this happens, I enter that space of not knowing, of being completely unclear. And I just allow it. I allow not to know. I don't make decisions from a place of fear or a place of being unclear, but I allow it rather than fighting it off. Rather than trying to force myself back into that clarity in the moment, which is when I'm more likely to listen to whatever noisy, fearful, personal thinking is going on, rather than the loving, quieter, small voice, the flow that's coming through me. So I wait. And often I sit there thinking, oh God, I know I'm going to start feeling better soon, and then I'm going to forgive him. That's annoying. I still go through that, even though I know what I'm doing. I know what's happening. But at every point, it could be the point where I decide, or we decide, or he decides, that our relationship has died this time, not to be reborn together, but to be reborn separately. And we'll still be in a relationship, Even if we didn't have children, we'd still have a relationship because of what we've shared, because of the energy between us, because we're all in relationship with each other in some way, even people we don't know, because we share an energy. But it doesn't mean we have to live together or be together or commit to each other. So what happens, or what could happen, or how that I do step away from a lot, because I'm not here to tell anyone how. I'm not here to tell myself how. You know, we're here to experience life, to listen to the wisdom that comes through us, the wisdom of the universe, the wisdom of flow, and make the next move. But language, how can we settle into the peace of the unknown? Because it shows up as self-doubt. Now there's a little gem in those words, really. Because what is the self, really? It's our perception of who we are. It's not truth. And our perception of who we are is different to the next person's perception of who we are, etc. And our perception of who we are is different from one day to the next. So when you're in a period of being unclear, which feels uncomfortable because there's self-doubt involved, just maybe remembering that we're not who we think we are. Have you ever had anyone say to you, or heard anyone say about someone else, "Oh, you're trying to be someone you're not," or "You're not who you make out to be. You're trying to be someone you're not. He's trying to be someone he's not." Well, there's kind of a truth in that, but the only truth in that is that in those times when people are seeing a clash between the energy someone's portraying and what they're saying and what they're trying to be, it's when we're forcing a separation from something we can't be separated from, flow. So you're trying to be someone you're not because you're trying to be in control when you're not in control. You're trying to separate yourself from the loving, perpetually moving, infinite intelligence of the universe. And all you do is shut down to hearing it. You can't disconnect from it. And I use the phrase flexing your trust muscle because it seems to embody the energy of allowing and faith for me. And it seems to help people that I'm connecting with the flow message to do the same. And we do it together, sort of holding on to each other's hands and holding someone's hand while they are feeling the fear and not allowing the trust to land yet. Just momentarily, just sort of holding their hand. So when you're in that space of the unknown, of being unclear, because I think the difference between being unclear and the unknown is simply the universal versus the personal. So the unknown is much more of the big picture, the future. Whereas being unclear is something that we can be in day to day for ourselves. What is it that I'm unclear about for my life, for my personal life, rather than this is the bigger picture of the unknown, of the future, or the unknown generally. So this is why the 7 facets of flow fell into this order, actually. Just struck me that it made sense to start with the unknown, to really deep dive into recognizing that when we try to know, it's almost the arrogance of the intelligent man using our power of thought against us, thinking we can know when we never can, because we will never ever be in possession of all the information. And then bringing that down into the personal, talking about self-doubt, being unclear. not knowing what our purpose is, not knowing who our soulmate might be. And then recognizing that from that lack of clarity, from being unclear, is how we move from moment to moment. It's how we can remember not to project forward, not to plan to within an inch of our lives, not to structure everything, to allow that flexibility. You know, even in the putting together of this course, which if you're watching it live, we're January 2017. We're February 2017. The first one was in January, we're now in February. People can sign up at any time because everything's being recorded. And there was a real need for people to sign up before it began, to be able to sort of get in there and know that they could see everyone at the given time. There's a real attachment. And attachment is a detachment is a big part of being unclear. But so there's a real mirror in what I'm talking about here and how this all panned out. And I had a few emails about what is exactly the time, and I don't think I can join the course because I'm not free that time, and is it going to be that time every week? And it was really interesting because it pushed my buttons of, oh, you know, I really need to maybe being clearer about this, and, you know, don't want to throw people off the deep end right at the beginning because this is the course in flow. It's not like we're in understanding of it right now. But then I realized it doesn't matter either way. You know, whoever's here will be here, and it'll be all right, because that's the point of this. Flow is always running through us, whatever's going on for us. So it was good to have a conversation with a couple of those people and just ask them those questions. You know, is it important? Does it matter? It's okay if it does, but just check in and just see. But what we're really talking about here is that these 7 weeks, these 8 episodes, are a bridge back to being in conscious connection to flow. So we're going to bump up against our edges, myself included, because there's so much thought habits, conventional so-called wisdom that we're still in the energy of. And that's what I kind of want to wake ourselves up from, kind of almost kind of give us a bit of a body shake and a breath in and expand into what really is possible when we live in the unknown and we accept being unclear. So that was why the order of the 7 facets: the unknown, being unclear, next week's acceptance. Then we go into trust, and arguably surrender is extreme trust. And then conscious connection, or connection, week 6, and 7, love. Because love is what holds it all together. Flow is love. Love is flow. So in talking about purpose, in talking about relationships, in talking about the experiences we have, the former experiences of our lives, where we're invited to presume, accept, assume that life is one way and that it's linear, we can be forgiven for wanting to make certain things happen. We can be forgiven for thinking life should look a certain way. And really, this forgiveness thing, it's really about forgiving ourselves for that. And next time we're in that energy of wanting, let's call it an urgent energy of needing rather than wanting, that urgent energy of needing clarity and wanting to be able to project out into the future 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Can we just pause and drop into that moment where we don't have any clarity whatsoever and take the next step and the next step and the next step? How would life look to us? And one of the fears that might come in when we experiment with that is fear of what other people will think. Is it possible to live outside of this control mechanism that the world has collaborated and corroborated in? Well, of course it is. Of course it is. When we talk more about trust and surrender and connection and love, I'm hoping that this will unfold for you in the way that works for you. So, yes, hence the order of these 7 facets. And it is worth me saying at this point, seeing as I've mentioned it, that nothing is the same for everybody. And I suspect that some of you who signed up for this course, you heard something that made sense to you. You might not have even known what it was, or you were curious, understandably curious at some of the counterintuitive topics, facets that we're exploring here, but you didn't really know why you wanted to sign up or wanted to listen or wanted to explore. But you're taking the next step. And in doing that, you're consciously connecting to flow, because you are allowing yourself to move by the moment and with the moment in the energy of being unclear. So clarity in the moment, I don't know what times you put on that. Is it a minute, 5 minutes, 5 years? I don't know. Because it's different for all of us. And clarity in the moment can drop in at any time. And there seems to be a balance. And for fun, I've put these words around it in this, the word is coming up, rule or law, which I don't really want to use, but I'm struggling to find the right word. But the way that I communicate this to my clients, to Damien a lot, we talk about this a lot, and it is wonderful to be in a relationship where you can explore this. But equally, it's just as juicy if you're with someone who is looking at life differently, because you're firing off that contrast and you can explore life from a different perspective. But the way that I've been communicating this is 80% vibration, 20% action. It's not a new way of looking at things. It's just a way of expressing it that works for me and for my flowers so far. And it simply means, as it says, that being 100% in action isn't going to serve us, because we are not taking the space, allowing the space where we're not clear to marinate around us, that sea of infinite possibilities. And it seems to me that it really is that way balanced. It's off balance, but it's 100%. It's the whole. 80% vibration, so 80% the energy you're in. I don't know if you can hear my Tibetan bowls in the background, but sound is vibrating. I've got the crown chakra vibration going on in the background. The frequency of that energy center, that meridian, to open me up to whatever's going to come out, because I'm not clear what I'm going to say. I'm open to flow guiding me, dropping into the space where I trust that there will be less personal thinking. I doubt there'll be no personal thinking, because I'm only human, but less personal thinking. So 80% vibration, and that's the vibration, the frequency of allowing of expansion, of trusting, of accepting. So you're seeing where these 7 facets of flow are coming from. Being unclear, being in the unknown. And then 20% of the time, you'll move and you'll take the action. Sometimes it might be 80 days of inaction, 20 days action, or it might be 80 minutes, 20 minutes, or none of the above. It's just an idea. It's just use those numbers to launch an idea of where we could really be at if we sink into the vibrational side of things. And this is why my flow healing part of my flow work is so joyful, because I'm working with people in an energetic sense in their vibration and consciously connecting to all there is, flow, as well as to each other, because it's all one anyway. And just in being consciously connected, we raise our vibration. We become more aware. Our personal mind is quieter. And we hear more about what that 20% action might be. So vibration isn't really clear, it's an energy, it's a feeling of possibility. And I suppose going back to my science days at school, potential energy. I remember talking about potential energy, things that are about to move, and kinetic energy, things that are moving, if I remember correctly. So we're kind of 80% in that potential, things are built, growing, and then let loose 20%. So being unclear is more of a fruitful, juicy place to be the majority of the time, I propose to you. So allowing yourself to be in that space. Trusting that when you're to move into action, you'll know. And because flow is, because can there really? I'm actually asking that question genuinely. And please email me if, I'm a sponge, I'm a student, not a teacher. Can there really be any doubt that there is an infinite intelligence behind life that moves? Hence my word flow. And then maybe I shouldn't make apologies. I will make an apology here for reiterating that the word flow is so key because of the movement of life. Life isn't static. And when we try to be static, that is when we fall into dis-ease in our lives. We're trying to force something to stay the same, force a relationship to stay the same, force our job to stay the same. So actually that reminds me of something that I was going to mention earlier and then got moved on from. But we are living in a global society, I would say, probably not everywhere in the world, where we still have this concept of longevity in our work. I used to be a headhunter in the city, and when we had CVs come in, I was in the investment banking team. We would dismiss quite callously, actually, when I look back, any CV of people who'd moved jobs within a year. We wanted to see commitment and longevity and, the hard work and hard graft of commitment to and loyalty. So there's this fearful desire to force ourselves to commit and to be in one space and one energy for longer than our body's, mind's energy of being really wants to allow. I was certainly in jobs for longer than I should be. I was depressed for most of my 20s and 30s. I was trying to force things to be a certain way most of daily, I would say. And it was not surprising, I suppose, when it was all around me, when, I believed I had to be in a job. I believed I needed to earn lots of money to be happy. Why the penny didn't drop that I wasn't happy and I was earning lots of money, I really don't know, but it did eventually. But I was clear. I had crystal clarity that was how it had to be. Life was hard work, and you lived later. You lived after you finished the hard work bit. And I briefly spoke about the insurance industry in the episode on the unknown. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry in the UK alone, and it capitalizes on people's fear of the future, fear of the unknown in the future. But we're also doing the same with the pensions industry, aren't we? We're deferring our life, and we can't defer our life, can we? We're enough. You can't. But the energy of trying to is what causes the dis-ease in our minds and the inability to consciously connect to flow and hear the message, however that comes to us, different for every person, that will bring us the well-being, that will remind us back, take us back to our well-being. So some of us get up every morning, go to that job, get home every night because we think there's a bigger picture here. We're living for the future, we're not living for now. And a lot of parents do it, because they want to give their kids the best in the future. Maybe all their kids want is for them to be there now. They don't care if they don't go to the south of France on holiday or wherever. So we all think we have such a clear idea of how life is, but by swimming around in that lack of clarity, more possibilities will open up to us. We'll have more experiences in life, I guess, because we're not fixed. We're not fixed on any ideas. And so let me speak to that concept, if you like, of the big idea, which I mentioned earlier. Because I'm still reveling in the lack of clarity in that. Even though at that moment in October, I did write it down and I had to play with the language and the words, and things have evolved. I'm completely detached from it. Actually, am I? Maybe there was some attachment sometimes, but I know that won't help me. So just being aware of that attachment helps me to detach a little bit more. I'm happy to know that I have thought habits. And I'm also happy to know that they can disappear without any force or control from me. So these big ideas, and in my more intensive coaching program, Flow World, where I'm working in a group of 7 at a more intensive level with people, we've been sharing our big ideas, and it's such a fun energy. And the only rule we have, well, maybe there's 2, but they're very much part of one another, is to be loving about it towards ourselves, but also to let it go. So one day we'll revel in the energy and the feeling of what it might look like, the words around it. And then we say, well, I'm open to it changing tomorrow, next year. Now, if flow is moving through us and that is for our highest good and it's aligned to who we are, it might happen exactly as you first put it down. It might, or it might not. And this is the mystery. This is the mystery of flow, is that we'll never really know whether what we're doing is going to make a difference or not. So why don't we let go of thinking that it really does and give ourselves a break and live in the lightness and the playfulness of life? I don't always achieve the playfulness, but I don't try anymore. And if I'm not feeling it, I just let it be. But I know that when I am feeling playful and when I do find life funny, and I don't mean to sound like I'm trivializing things, but starting to open up this expansive lack of clarity feeling for myself and in my view of the world, it seems like I'm hovering over this world where Donald Trump is the president, and I'm an observer, and I'm incredulous at some of the stuff. And yes, I take people's feelings extremely seriously. And the reason I trained to be a life coach back in 2008 was simply because I wanted us all to feel better about ourselves and each other. Simple. And it's still the same. I just want us all to be happy. And I used to think that happiness was attached to certain outside circumstances. Now I see it's nothing to do with that. It's an inside job. But I do look at the world now, and obviously Trump is the most obvious example. And I can actually laugh. I know, I apologize if that sounds offensive, but I'm curious about what's going on. What's going to happen? And at the same time, I find myself feeling emotions because I'm consciously connecting more and more to Flo, to you, to Donald Trump. You know, we're all part of the same energy. We're no different. And one of the reasons that I can identify with every single human being now, most of the time, except when my own thinking runs away with itself, which happens, of course. The reason I can do that is that I now really understand that we all create our reality the same way, from the inside out, via our thinking, that we're not in control of our thinking. And a lot of us create disease for ourselves and project it out towards others when we believe our fearful thinking. Our fearful thinking of I need to be in control, our fearful thinking of I need to be powerful, our fearful thinking of other human beings. So I can see the innocence now in the process. And of course, it starts by seeing your own innocence. And that's where I started anyway, seeing my own innocence, and now seeing the innocence of people who do terrible things. Because it's the great equalizer, isn't it? We're all equally creating our own reality as we go along, moment by moment. And it humbles me, and it helps me to be in an unjudgmental space and be in the space of the unknown and not being clear. God, you know, I ended up not being clear about whether I was going to make it today at 7 o'clock. You know, I have children who are in the house, and, you know, I know that they could come through the door at any moment. So, but I trust that it's okay. And I don't have a mask to wear anymore. I don't have an image to put forward. I don't have expectations on myself or expectations on anyone who's listening to me to think any particular way. It will just be. And I do have desire. I do have desires. I desire us to recognize our connection and to see what happens from there. And those clients I have in my remote flow healing sessions at the moment are really recognizing our connection. And when we get into that consciously connected space, it's pretty amazing how we read each other without words and from afar. And that sounds a bit enigmatic, you know, I haven't really got time to give examples, but if anyone is interested in flow healing and wants to chat to me about it, just drop me a note. So I believe in this moment that I've said all that I'm able to say, all that I'm meant to say, if there's such a thing as something that's meant to be. So I'll sign off and just express huge gratitude to everyone who's listening to this in February 2017 or whenever in the future. And invite you to join me next week for week 3, which is acceptance. And in the meantime, I'll be emailing you the recording of this. So there's an open channel there for you to ask me any questions, give me any feedback. I love hearing about challenges or successes or breakthroughs or anything in between. So with lots of love and in anticipation of next week, I'll see you soon. Bye for now.